You are watching the Knowledge Gap Foundation.
Just to say that a system can't prove its own consistency, it doesn't follow that there's something that's metaphysical. Where are you getting that inference from?
Okay. Just let me continue with what I'm saying. Okay, so like the examination of the fundamental nature of truth, like existence and rational structure, Gödel doesn't like prove any specific metaphysical doctrine. Instead, what he does is he demonstrates that the ambition to explain everything purely through closed, self-grounding formal systems is impossible. Okay, so that's his whole point.
Yeah, but where are you getting the inference that there has to be something
finish.
metaphysical?
Just let me finish. Just let me finish, okay? And that's because every system rests on assumptions that cannot themselves be proven formally. Reflection on those assumptions become unavoidable or inevitable, and that's precisely what metaphysics does, right? So you're just calling it a different name. I'm just calling it metaphysics, okay? So because every
what are you
system that we
talking
have-
about?
Okay. Can a self-contained system show its consistency from within?
No, but it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, but
And
the
to do
point is that
what
it
do you have
doesn't
to do?
follow. It
And
doesn't
look,
follow that there has to be something that's non-formal or metaphysical to ground the truth. Because the alternative
that's just considering that you don't want to ground it or not.
consistency
That's
is a
considering you don't want to ground it.
property. To be clear, consistency is a property of a system, right? Something like proofs are going to be some type of internal relation. No system can capture their own meta language.
Okay.
That's a problem with
So
languages themselves.
what do we have to use? Yeah, because language is inherently circular. I don't disagree.
Yeah, a map, like
And
for example, let's say we have-
that's why we step outside of that and we delve into metaphysics to then so then the consistency within the self-contained system becomes demonstrable.
Yeah, like for example, let's say we had a map, right? And the map can't include itself at full scale. Do you think then you would need some type of supernatural cartographer? No, obviously not. That's not what's being implied, right? To say there are true but unprovable statements in a given system just means truth in a model, specifically truth in some type of standard model given like arithmetic. That's semantic. We don't need some type of metaphysical, like some type of non-formal metaphysical aspect to even show that, right? Model theory already shows that it's entirely internal to logic itself. You don't need any ontology of like a proof maker.
Wait, 1 moment. Okay, wait, 1 moment. Can a self-contained system demonstrate its consistency? Yes or no?
I already said no.
Okay, and so to do that, what do we have to do?
What do you mean to do that? What do we have to do?
Yeah, if we want the consistency to be demonstrable, what do we do?
Maybe give some type of motivating reason or something
And
like
that is what? That is what? What is that? Under what modality does that fall?
Well, you don't need to look at metaphysics. You can look at something like explanatory scope, breadth, parsimony, etc. We don't need to look at some like metaphysical thing, right? We can do some type of external testing.
Give me an example.
Yeah, like for example, if we look at something like, I'm just going to use the PSR, which I don't really agree to it, but let's say PSR, right? We can't demonstrate its own consistency.
No, we reject it. We reject it. Nope, we reject PSR. Now what?
No, I'm just giving an example. I don't accept PSR either. I'm just saying we can look at something like induction and maybe.
Why are you giving an example of something that's false?
Huh?
Why are you using something that's false?
What do you mean using something that's false? I'm just giving an example on how we could try to fucking prove something that can't be demonstrated.
We don't care about that.
You don't care about what? Announce X for an example on how we can prove something that can't demonstrate its own consistency. We can look at PSR. We can see if it's inductively justified, maybe abductively justified. Explanatory scope.
Are you using any sort of metaphysics to demonstrate it?
What do you mean demonstrate it? Okay. You can't demonstrate the PSR given that we haven't observed everything.
That's just a claim. But so you said that an example.
Well, that's obviously true.
You said that I disagree with that. So now you said that we can you gave an example as the PSR and that you said you can explain it without using metaphysics, right?
No, well, kind of. I'm just saying we don't need to look at something else that's metaphysical to posit like this extra entity. I'm just saying, look, we can look at something like induction, abduction, etc. We don't need to posit something metaphysical to accept. So, for example, I hold the view that axioms are the type of thing that can't be justified.
Okay, and so how do we? And you understand that metaphysics is done through abduction itself, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I don't understand your point. Because
I'm just saying it doesn't necessitate something metaphysical. You're saying it necessitates something metaphysical. I'm saying no, it doesn't.
Okay, if you're using abductive reasoning, you are using some sort of metaphysical reasoning.
How does that follow?
Okay, so you agree that we use metaphysics, right? We use metaphysics. It's done through abduction, right? So metaphysics is done through abduction. We agree with that, right?
Yeah, but you said if we're using some sort of abduction or induction, you're using some type of metaphysical reasoning. That's just false.
Yeah, when you're using that, describing the PSR, you literally would be. I want you to go ahead and try and explain the PSR without using any metaphysical reasoning.
Well, to be clear, I kind of want to get back to the claim you made and where you said if you use abduction. Are you talking about abduction simpliciter?
No,
because that's just false.
No, we're going back to the claim that you made that you could explain the PSR. Essentially, that's what you agreed to. You could explain the PSR without using any metaphysics.
Yeah, you can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because if we strip it of its ontic baggage, PSR is just saying something like, for any fact, it's rational to think that there's some type of explanation. That's not even a claim about metaphysics. That's just some type of norm governing thing. We can use something like...
Wait, that's not a metaphysical claim?
Nope.
Wait, so the PSR is not a metaphysical claim anymore?
Well, if we use its non-metaphysical form, which is going to be like some epistemic version, then yeah, it's not metaphysical.
Well, obviously we know what PSR that we're talking about. What do you think?
Well, that's the version.
What do you think I'm talking about?
Yeah, you want to say something like, for any contingent fact, there is an explanation. But if we use some type of...
That's a metaphysical principle.
Yeah, but if we use the methodological version, which is just to say that for any fact or event, it's rational to expect that there's an explanation, then there's not going to be any metaphysics even posited, because you're assuming some type of regularity and rejecting... You're preferring something that's explainable as opposed to something that's not. I think those types, you can use something like induction, abduction, or epistemic constraints to explain that.
Okay, so when I use the word PSR and I index it to my belief, am I referring to metaphysics?
You are, yeah.
Okay, so when I use that itself, is there any way to explain it without using metaphysics?
No.
Okay,
I'm saying
so that's the whole
what I'm
point.
saying is
all we're doing. Okay, look, all we're doing now is just equivocating on the word PSR. Okay, when I refer to PSR, I'm referring to the PSR that I believe in, that is indexed to the metaphysical modality under my belief. Okay, so
yeah, but we were specifically talking about Gödel's incompleteness theorem. You were saying that
yes,
it needs something metaphysical, which isn't true. That's not even a Gödelian principle.
Okay. So I'll tell you again, right? So his incompleteness theorem, it just shows that any sufficiently powerful and consistent formal system, like for example, arithmetic, like we said earlier, it contains true systems, or statements in this case, that cannot be proven within the system itself. And that such a system cannot prove its own consistency, it's self-contained, hence the name. This means that formal reasoning, it can never be fully self-contained, and that truth always outruns proof. And the very reliability of our logic and mathematical frameworks cannot be justified purely from within them, because they're self-contained. But once we ask, like for example, what makes unprovable truths true, and why we should trust the consistency of our reasoning, or how formal systems relate to reality, we've stepped like beyond mathematics and into metaphysics once we do that. Do you understand that?
I'm kind of confused because...
Okay. What are you confused on?
I kind of hate that you did it, but I heard the term justify logic in math, which I don't think that's possible. Because logic is logic is non-propositional. You can't justify it. Because justification is
Is
just...
that what you think? Is that what you think? When somebody says, look, math is a system. No one's saying that math itself is that something propositional. No, math is arithmetic. There are arithmetic sentences that we prove to be true. Okay? So that is what is meant by math is something, math is self-contained and has truths within it. That's a blunder. That's not what I'm referring to. Okay? So when we justify math, all we're doing is we're justifying the system itself. Math is a formal system that we use. Okay?
You can't justify systems. Justification applies to propositions.
Yes.
A system isn't a proposition.
Well, within the system, there are arithmetic sentences. What are you talking about? It's either true or false that 2 + 2 is 4.
Yeah, but you can't justify
so that's
the system itself. You would only need to justify those type of propositions.
the system is made up of different axioms. Okay.
Well, axioms aren't the kind of thing that can be justified either.
Just one moment. Math itself. Okay, why do we prove things in math?
Why do we prove things in math? Yeah, we talk about like certain piano axioms or etc. And then we look at how the syntax and semantics.
Yeah, piano's axioms. Yes. Okay, but why do we prove things in math? It's because the actual formal system of math within it are things that can be either proven true or false. That's the whole point. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, you stepped into metaphysics, right? Once you say that the consistency of our reasoning or how formal systems relate to reality, once you say that, we have already stepped into metaphysics and we've left mathematics. We've stepped beyond math. Once you say that.
And by math, are we talking about the axioms?
Yes.
Oh, those aren't provable.
Well, not just itself, not just the axioms itself, everything else, right? But an axiom or pianos, yes, I know they're self-evident truths. I don't disagree. You don't prove a self-evident truth. That's a contradiction. You don't really do that because it's true, but it's evidently true. So now, with that being said, like Gödel says, a system itself, if it's self-contained, it cannot prove itself. So once you use something else to prove that system, you've jumped into metaphysics. Okay? If you don't do that, then all you're doing is rejecting metaphysics. That's it. So if you reject metaphysics,
so we aren't talking about the axioms then.
Not just the axioms.
What else would we be talking about?
Have you not taken a math course?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of unclear because it seemed to me like you were talking about the axioms at first.
No, because the axioms wouldn't need justification.
So then what aspects are we talking about?
Everything else that's found within math? Like for example,
everything else that's found within math is justified within the system.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, right? But to get back to the point, everything that is self-contained, meaning it's a system that is self-contained, itself cannot show the consistencies within it to be true, right? We don't know if all the consistencies in there are quote-unquote consistent, right? Does it have any inconsistencies? We wouldn't know, okay? So the whole point that I'm trying to make is everything, just
you understand, to be clear, you understand that everything that's non-axiomatic that counts as a theorem within math is justified relative to the theorem, to the axioms?
That's irrelevant right now, okay?
No, because if we're not talking about the axioms, then we can't be talking about anything being justified outside of the system, because theorems and rules of inference are the only things that are axiomatic. Everything else is justified relative to those. So if we're not talking about the axioms, what are we even talking about?
I don't think you're understanding. Okay, forget math. Just take a random domain. Okay, this domain, it's a formal system, and the consistencies found within there we cannot justify unless we appeal to something external to it to justify it. Okay, can we agree that that's how it works for every self-contained system?
What? No. What? Because look, everything that's non-axiomatic, right, is justified relative to the axioms. That's for almost every formal system.
Okay, so I don't
right? We can look
understand.
at logic.
Wait. Do you agree with Gödel's incompleteness theorems?
A little bit, but the point that I'm trying to make is that it doesn't necessitate something
what?
metaphysical.
What part do you disagree with?
I disagree with his criteria for things like consistency, but that's fine. Look, the point is that the point is this, right?
I was
Everything,
sorry. I was under the impression that you accepted Gödel's incompleteness theorems.
even if I did, right, it doesn't necessitate something metaphysical.
Yes, it does. If you
No,
accept,
because
if
unless
you
we're
accept
talking about the
everything-
axioms.
Okay, listen. If you accept everything within the incompleteness theorems that Gödel has brought forth to us, then you would literally accept that we would have to get into metaphysics to justify self-contained formal systems that cannot justify
Gödel
themselves.
doesn't talk about metaphysics.
Dude,
That's
you don't
nowhere in his
understand.
proof.
Okay, you said you haven't. Have you read his incompleteness theorems, all of them?
Yeah, it doesn't talk about anything metaphysical.
Okay, I need you to understand that when Gödel talks about self-contained systems, he's talking about systems that don't justify themselves. That's the whole point of his theorems, right? Is to show that here we cannot justify whether the axioms or everything in there completely to be true. So we have to go to something external. Okay?
Well,
And
axioms aren't the kind of thing that can be justified. And then given everything
okay,
that's non-axiomatic, every theorem is justified relative to the axiom. Like we can take formal logic, for example, right? Everything that counts as a theorem in formal logic is justified relative to the laws of logic,
I don't
which are
disagree.
axiomatic.
Okay.
So then
do you
what are we
believe-
talking about that needs
do you
justification?
believe? Okay, there's something that you don't agree with here. Do you believe that there are self-contained systems that cannot justify everything that is found within the system?
Yes, that would be referring to the axioms.
Okay, so you don't believe you have to justify axioms whatsoever?
We can't justify them showing some virtue of necessity, but we can justify them given like pragmatics. But that wouldn't be like something that justifies them deductively.
Okay.
We're just talking about what's useful.
Okay, so if we did want to justify the axioms, we would have to go external to the actual theorem itself, right? Or the system here.
They're not the kind of thing that can be deductively justified. They're
you say?
accepted. Yeah, they're not the kind of thing that can be deductively justified.
Yes, it is. What are you talking about?
No, axioms are going to be some type of starting assumption of a formal system that's not derived from something else.
Let me
Proven
ask you
within the
this.
system.
So in math, can you name an axiom in math that we know of? I'm gonna give you an example.
We can look at something like, let's just use logic. Let's look at like law of non-contradiction.
Okay, is the law of non-contradiction something that can be proven deductively?
Now,
You are a low tier. Thank you, bro.
You are watching the Knowledge Gap Foundation.